The SBM Jollof Index simplifies food inflation in a way that ordinary citizens can understand by using that delicacy which is common to all Nigerian households, jollof rice. The Jollof Index is curated from data on the most common ingredients that go into cooking the jollof rice. This data is collected from 13 markets across the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria on a monthly basis, except for the month of December, because of seasonal spikes caused by year-end celebrations. Is your appetite whetted by that? Can you bring that again? I love that those images. For a Monday morning. Okay, let's get a show out first. Ikemesit Effiong, the head of research at SBM Intelligence, joins me now to jollof this conversation. Not quite a very good one there. You just whet up my appetite at the end of the show, but a very good time. Got a few more minutes to get out of the show, and then we can have those delicacies together. For those of folks who are unaware, tell us how you go about putting your jollof index together. Tell me about the ingredients.
Right. So for every Nigerian family, now for a lot of West African families, right, the basic ingredients that go into preparing a pot of jollof rice, you got your tomatoes, you've obviously got the rice, right, all of the seasoning, right, that goes into preparing it. You also got, the tomatoes and the peppers and everything. So we track, a wide suite of food prices, right, and we just kind of isolate, some of the key things that go into creating a very nice, hot, savory pot of jollof rice. And we kind of put a composite index together to tell this overarching story around how food inflation in Nigeria generally is doing. And we do this across a number of markets. We track food prices in 13 markets in about 8 or 9 cities across Nigeria. And so that's really the substratum, right, of the Jollof Index and how it's constructed.
Interesting. Can I say there is a positive correlation between your report and the food inflation data released by the Statistics Office, officially speaking?
Yes, largely, because we largely track right, the same thing, the same things. We largely track, food prices. What we try to do with the Jollof Index is to sort of create a visual picture, right? And you've got multiple markets that have similar sorts of indexes. The really popular one globally is the Big Mac Index, which sort of tracks, how much it costs to get a burger in select McDonald's stores across the world. And that's kind of what we tried to do with Jollof Index, which is that, we are all familiar with, and you certainly are in your line of work, you are familiar with all of the percentages and the inflation numbers and the drip drop of data, right, that the NBS, releases on a monthly basis. And for us, we felt that telling a more visual story, a more relatable story, right, of how Nigerian households are doing in terms of food spending, right, and how much it costs, right, for Nigerian households to feed themselves, right, visually and in a manner which is relatable across the country was important, right. And so, the Jollof Index, I've been doing that for 5 years now.
Yeah, so prices are rising. Can you give me more details on your findings for the third quarter, which was July to September, and if the index is going to change as we get into the festive season, in which there will be more jollof on the table across the country?
Yes, right. And so, the numbers are inching up. There was a slight dip, right, in July, but prices rose again in August and September, right? And this is for the third quarter of the year, right, that we tracked. And what's pretty key, right, is that the food security index of Nigerians, of which, the Jollof Index is a proxy, right, is continuing to trend in the negative column. And that's largely because the 4 key dimensions of food security, access, availability, stability, and utilization, have been greatly affected by, a host of macroeconomic as well as social conditions which are prevalent in the country. You think the persistent and widespread insecurity in large parts of the country, policy setting, right, which has, aided, right, the rise in the price of key import items, the recent occurrence of natural disasters that have been flooding in some key food growing regions in the country, and also price swings in global commodity markets, which has obviously as an economy, right, that's largely commodity price dependent, there would always be a follow through effect, right, on the prices of, not just food, but also other goods and items right across the country. And so what you're seeing, right, is that, there is a more immediate, it's a near instant effect. Typically the lag effect between some of these macro effects happening and food prices could be measured in the months. It appears as though, some of those lag effects now have been shrunk down to mere weeks, really. And the prices of, things like, away from the Jollof Index, the prices of things like beans, for example, right, and even Gary, right, are shot up astronomically just because, some of these, key social and economic indicators, right, have, doubled down in the negative column, and those conditions are, are only worsening.
Yeah, so when you do your survey, putting the numbers together, which regions of the country saw the highest increases in the cost of input to a typical plate of jollof rice?
Right. So this was quite interesting, right, for us, because we track multiple. I mean, we track multiple markets, right, in individual cities, right. So in Lagos, for example, we collect food prices in places like Balogun and Trade Fair, for example, and there oftentimes is a margin in terms of what the price differentials are between those markets. But in terms of overall markets nationally, the markets in Abuja, chiefly Nyanya, right, which is quite interesting because Nyanya is the closest markets to some of the most productive agricultural regions in the country. You're thinking pockets of Nasarawa and Benue, as well as Kogi states, as well as the main markets in Abuja, we say too, right? Those saw the highest, right, increases, and those are the most expensive places to basically shop for, your jollof rice condiments. The markets in Ibadan, Bodija, and Dugbe were also, saw, really, really sharp increases, right, in prices. And one thing is clear, right, some of these markets which are really close to, key food growing regions are beginning to see the more immediate effects in terms of the pull through of, conditions changing adversely, right, in either food growing or sort of on the policy making side, and especially, on the security side. Key commonalities that the Ibadan markets and the Abuja markets share is that, they have this outsized exposure to food growing regions in the country that have been severely impacted by rising, insecurity, for example. And so, it's quite interesting, in terms of, looking at our index, how the index not only tracks food prices, but it also serves as a proxy for sort of more wider political and social issues that are going on in key parts of the country.
Technically speaking, what do you think? A sneak preview of your fourth quarter report?
Okay, so we typically don't do fourth quarter reports. So what we'll do is, in our first quarter for 2022, we would include October, November prices and just do sort of like a composite index. So sneak peek to Q1, if I could set my own question, right, based off of yours and answer it, would be that, we think there's still more of an upside in terms of, how food prices can do, right, in the country, right, in the absence of aggressive policy setting to ensure that food security, right, the food security of Nigerians continues to be guaranteed. There's only one upside really for food prices, and that's up. And that's sad. I wish I had much better news to share with you, but that's really what the trend line seems to indicate.
I wish you've got more cheery news. Well, maybe for another day, I just want to find out what an average price of a plate of jollof rice will cost me right now based on your... do you think government can bring down prices a little bit for the price of jollof rice, keep the quality?
So it certainly could, government could certainly help, right? What you've had is that over the last 4 years, at least, some could take about the last 5 years, the government has pursued a food self-sufficiency strategy where basically it's tried to get the country to grow as much of our food, if not all of our food, and meet all of our food requirements as much as it can domestically. But what that has meant, is that because of larger structural issues, especially around the infrastructure deficit, what we're doing around food storage and all of that, it's been very hard to keep that. But Nigerians are basically paying the cost in higher food prices.
Well, Ikemesit, what we're going to do, let's try this out. Let's take each other out for a plate of jollof rice and find out what the price looks like. You go first. Okay, let's leave it there for this morning.